The story begins with a father traveling by car with his daughter, Alexia. On the way, as often happens with young children, Alexia tries to annoy her father. The father looks uncomfortable and asks Alexia to be quiet, but ironically, because of this, he loses focus and causes an accident. The father was not seriously injured in the accident, but Alexia suffered more severe consequences. Alexia suffered a fracture in her skull and eventually had to be patched with the metal material titanium. After undergoing surgery and having just been discharged from the hospital, Alexia suddenly experienced a quite strange change. She suddenly hugged her father's car as if it were the person she loved and missed the most. Years later, with the stitches still visible, the grown-up Alexia works as a sales promotion girl at a sports car showroom. On her way home, a male fan asks for a photo or her autograph, making Alexia feel awkward, but she eventually complies with the man's request. But suddenly, Alexia kissed the man and then stabbed him with her hairpin. In the end, she killed the man. After the incident, Alexia then took a shower. However, suddenly, there was a sound from outside from one of the cars at the exhibition where she worked. Without a piece of cloth attached to her body, Alexia approached the car and got into it. Then, a very unexpected and absurd event occurred where Alexia began to vent her sexual desires on the car. The next day, when Alexia woke up in her house, she realized that there were bruises around her female area. Alexia then went out for breakfast while watching TV. On a news program, it was reported that there had been a serial murder allegedly committed by Alexia herself. After that, the news mentioned the disappearance of a little boy named Adrian, who had been missing for 10 years. Later, her father shows up and joins her for breakfast, but it is clear that their relationship is not harmonious. Later that evening, Alexia was surprised to see a black liquid suddenly coming out of her vagina. Suspicious, she decided to use a test pack, and her nightmare came true. She was pregnant out of wedlock. However, even more shocking and absurd, the father of her future baby was a car. Alexia, unable to accept reality, tried to terminate the pregnancy. However, after her efforts were fruitless, she began to vent her frustration by killing her friends one by one. From this, it can be concluded that Alexia has a psychopathic nature. In addition, she also has a sexual attraction to cars, a disorder called mechanophilia, where the sufferer has a passion for objects that have engines. Unfortunately, one of her friends, whom Alexia wanted to kill, managed to escape, revealing Alexia's true identity. This is evident when Alexia decides to run away from her home. Upon arriving at the station, she found her photo plastered on the wanted list as a murderer. As time passes, Alexia finally gets the idea to change her identity as Adrian, a boy rumored to be missing for 10 years. Alexia did this because she realized that if Adrian was found, he should have reached adolescence, just like her. Alexia took several steps to perfect her disguise, which made her look like a man. She was willing to break her nose to achieve her goal. When ready, she confidently went to the police station and claimed to be Adrian. Not long after, Adrian's biological father, Vincent, arrived at the police station. Vincent immediately talked to Alexia, whose appearance had now changed into a man. After that, Vincent invited Alexia to his workplace, where it turned out that Vincent worked as a firefighter and was a captain of the fire team. In addition, in an unnatural period, Alexia's stomach grew more prominent due to her pregnancy, which caused itching in her stomach. This made Alexia scratch it so much that it caused wounds. However, what tormented her the most was when she had to wrap a cloth around her body to keep her breasts from protruding, as well as to hide her pregnancy. As a firefighter who is required to always be in top condition, Vincent injects steroids into his body every night before going to bed. The steroid keeps his body in shape. As a good father, Vincent introduced Alexia to his subordinates the next day at work and taught her how to become a firefighter. One night, while Alexia and Vincent were having dinner, Vincent realized that his son had a feminine style. As a result, Vincent provoked Alexia and asked her to fight. However, a girl is still a girl, as Alexia could not defeat the strength of a man who tends to be stronger. Because she was upset, Alexia had planned to run away from the place. But in the end, Alexia abandoned her plans and decided to return home. Seeing his son leave the house, as usual, Vincent was seen injecting steroids into his body, but this time with more doses than usual, so as a result, his body became very weak. As he lay there, Alexia, who had not run away, saw him in an unconscious state. At first, Alexia thought about killing him, but because she felt Vincent was a good person, Alexia abandoned her evil intentions. The next morning, Vincent accidentally saw Alexia wearing women's clothes. Instead of getting angry, this made Vincent laugh. He was reminded of Adrian's childhood, who had different sexual inclinations or orientations. This is evidenced by Vincent showing Adrian's childhood photo, where Adrian is seen wearing a woman's dress similar to Alexia is. Because of this incident, the tension between them was slightly eased. One day, Adrian's biological mother came after hearing that Adrian was now living with Vincent. It was discovered that Vincent and his wife had divorced since Adrian went missing. Meanwhile, Alexia's belly was getting bigger and itchier, causing her to scratch it frequently until she unknowingly tore her belly. Feeling very disturbed and tormented by her pregnancy, Alexia often tried to abort the pregnancy. Unfortunately, Adrian's mother suddenly caught Alexia. She realized that the person referred to as Adrian was not the real Adrian but someone else. Adrian's mother was upset because she had been deceived, but on the other hand, because she felt sorry for Alexia, who was suffering and was heavily pregnant, she forgave her. She also promised to conceal Alexia's true identity and asked Alexia to care for her ex-husband. Adrian's mother noticed her husband looked happier since Alexia was beside him. One night, when Vincent and his team were on duty, one of his men knew Alexia was posing as Adrian tried to tell Vincent. However, Vincent asked his men not to discuss this matter. On the other hand, Vincent himself had long begun to suspect that the current Adrian was not the real Adrian but someone else. Nevertheless, having lost a child and not wanting to feel the same loss for the second time, Vincent decided to accept Alexia and consider her as his biological daughter. This was evident when Vincent returned from duty and accidentally caught Alexia, who turned out to be a woman. Realizing this, instead of getting angry, he said that whoever she was, he would consider her a child and would accept her as she was. That night, when the firefighters were celebrating after work, Alexia suddenly climbed onto a fire truck and started dancing like an erotic dancer. However, this made all the firefighters frown because they had thought Alexia was a man. In addition, Vincent, who also saw the incident, was embarrassed by Alexia's embarrassing behavior. After the party was over, out of shame, Vincent tried to commit suicide by burning himself alive. However, in the end, he abandoned his intention. Meanwhile, Alexia, who had been holding back her sexual desires for a long time, finally couldn't hold back anymore and immediately vented on a fire truck. The next day, Alexia suddenly felt infinite pain in her abdomen, where she was about to give birth. In unbearable pain, she approached Vincent, who was asleep, because she didn't know who else to ask for help. Vincent was shocked and initially intended to leave her, but because he could not bear to see Alexia, who was about to give birth without the help of a doctor, Vincent began to help Alexia to give birth to her child. In the end, after a not too long process, the baby finally came out of Alexia's stomach. Unfortunately, Alexia herself could not survive, even after Vincent tried to give her artificial respiration. As a result, Vincent had no choice but to become the baby's father. And thus, the movie ends. Make sure to subscribe and don't forget to turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thank you for watching and see you next time.